streamed, so I'll take this adherent for this meeting of the Education Resources Committee of the 14th of February 2023. I can see that we have here, present Councillors Allison and Anderson. I have apologies from Councillor Bradley, and I see that Councillor Mars is here substituting for Councillor Bradley. I can see that Councillor Clark is here. Councillor Cowie. I can see that Councillor Cowie is participating remotely. Councillor Fagan. No, I don't see anything from Councillor Fagan. I can see that Councillor Faulkner. Councillor Faulkner, are you present at the meeting? I don't see anything from Councillor Faulkner, either at the meeting or online, so I'll record that at the moment as an apology. Councillor Ferguson is present, as is Councillor Frame, Councillor Fulton, Councillor Gray. Now, I understand that Councillor Gray is, has submitted her apologies. Do we have a substitute? My understanding was that Councillor Donnelly was substituting. Can I check if Councillor Donnelly's here? No, nothing from Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Horsham, I see that you're here. Councillor Johnson-Dempsey is participating. Just double checking. Councillor Johnson-Dempsey, can you confirm if you're participating at the meeting? Nope, nothing from Councillor Johnson-Dempsey. Councillor Keat, I see that you're present, as is Councillor Kerr. Councillor Lambie. Yep, I see that Councillor Lambie is participating remotely, as is Councillor Lockhart. Councillor Logan is present at the meeting. Councillor Logan is present at the meeting. Councillor Loudon is also participating remotely, as is Councillor McCallan. Councillor McGeever, I see that you're participating remotely. Councillor Razak is present at the meeting. Councillor Scott, I see that, I understand that Councillor Scott is present remotely. Councillor Thompson. Nothing from Councillor Thompson. I see that Councillor Walker is present at the meeting, as is Councillor Watson. Just moving on to external representatives. John Mulligan, I see that you're here. Anything from Dr Nagi Iskander? No, nothing. Gillian Coulter? Don't see anything from Gillian Coulter. I see that Jennifer Gaffney, the new teacher representative, is participating, as is Joan Lennon, also the new teacher representative. Hilary Kirby. Don't see anything from Hilary Kirby. And I see that Christine Hall is present at the meeting. There are a number of officers present at the meeting also. And with that, Chair, I'll hand back to you for the business of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and a warm welcome to our external representatives, and thank you for joining us at this meeting. Prior to starting the business today, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm here today on behalf of my colleague Councillor Hamilton, facilitating the role of Chair, and I think I can speak on behalf of all the members here and our external representatives, and very much assured that she's in our thoughts and that we hope for her return sooner rather than later. Okay, item number 1 on the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declaration of interest? Nope. And item number 2, the minutes of the previous meeting, which can be found on pages 5 to 16 in your papers. Can we approve this to be a correct record? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And that takes us to our items for monitoring. Agenda item number 3 is the Revenue Budget Monitoring 22-23. It's available on pages 17 to 20 in your papers, and I would ask Louise Harvey to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. So this is the third report for the committee this financial year, covering the revenue budget position from the 1st of April through to the 29th of December, which is period 10 of our financial year. Paragraph 4 on page 17 contains updated information in relation to the Scottish Attainment Challenge funding for this financial year. And for PEF, the total budget for the year is £11.540 million. And spend and commitment to date, as at the 29th of December, is £8.607 million, with £2.933 million still to spend. And this includes all our known staffing through to the 31st of March 23. PEF is fully committed to spend by the end of the academic year for education, and it is estimated that £1.5 million will be carried forward at the 31st of March and used in April to June 23. This will be transferred to reserves at year end as part of our normal accounting processes, and schools will continue to maximise spend in line with their school improvement plans. In relation to our Strategic Equity Fund, the budget for the year again is £1.473 million, and spend and commitment to date is £1.119 million, with £0.283 million still to spend. And again, this includes all staff costs that we know about to the 31st of March, and this is reflected within our committed position. The committee will continue to be updated with the spend position for all our Scottish Attainment Challenge programmes throughout the accounting year 22-23. Turning to the main financial implications of the report, paragraph 6.1 on page 18. The probable exercise for the Council has now been completed, and for education we are reporting a break-even position on our budget after transfers to reserves of £1.5 million for PEF. And these transfers were approved at the Executive Committee on the 1st of February. And this position also includes our learning recovery for the financial year. The break-even position reflects the net underspends in relation to early years core budgets, partially offsetting an overspend relating to mainstream transport and school placements, which, as you know, are demand-led. For mainstream transport, we have reported a significant increase in transport costs. We have reported a significant increase in transport costs by SPT, and this is reported at £2.240 million this financial year. But this is based on the SPT Q2 position, which came in around about October-November last year, and it is likely to increase further by the year end. The £2.240 million has been built into the outturn position, and this has been managed within the overall resource position. In terms of our learning recovery, and this was funding, as you know, provided by the Scottish Government last year, carried forward from prior years. The budget this year is £5.763 million, and it's included within the reported position as fully committed to the 31st of March this year. It's been used for our increased staffing across schools and services, and the continuation of enhanced cleaning and hygiene in our schools up to June 22, as well as several interventions and the digital inclusion programmes. There is a further £1.288 million available that will be used to support the staffing costs for April to June next financial year and the continuation of the strategic programmes, and all this funding is now committed. In relation to the current position, as at the 29th of December, the resource position is again a break-even position after our proposed transfers to reserves. And various explanations are outlined in Appendix A to this report, with the main areas representing as underspends within the early years core staffing budget due to vacancies and turnover, over-recovery of early years fees, with both of these areas supporting an overspend in transport, as mentioned, and also the cost of our external school placements. We have our standard budget variants, and these are proposed as set out at the bottom of Appendix A and reflect movements in education's budget from the 7th October, our last reported position, through to the 29th of December. And these relate to the following main areas: transfers from reserves to meet some of our expenditure commitments, transfers for funded items including pay award, the NI, clawback and also utilities, the creation of budget to reflect external income, transfers between resources for service changes, realignment of our budget to reflect how we deliver our services and money is spent, particularly in relation to our PEF programme, and also the realignment of budget within the resource to reflect the activity of the EMA programme and devolve management in schools. So if I can refer committee back to paragraph 2, the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the forecast to the 31st of March 23 of a break-even position after the transfers to reserves is noted, and this is outlined in Appendix A, that a break-even position on education resources revenue budget for period 10 of the financial year as at the 29th of December is also noted, and that the proposed budget variants be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive and detailed report, Louise. Just as a reminder, the recommendations are in section 2.1 on page 17. Do we have any questions? Councillor Loudon.
So if Councillor Loudon could press again, please.
Councillor Loudon, could you press, you are indicating to speak again, please?
Thank you.
Okay, I think I've connected. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Louise, for going through that. It's just a quick question about Appendix A, page 20. We've got, I think it's 0.6 from memory. It's showing 96,000 underspent on footwear and clothing to reflect demand there. Obviously, we've got auto-enrolment in place, have done for a number of years, but I just thought that underspend was quite surprising given the current context. I'm just wondering if we could check this, or if we knew if there was any reasoning behind it, if it was to do with timing of spend or timing of these enrolments coming through. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Yep, as you said, it is obviously auto enrolment for our young people, and it's based on entitlement, and this is managed via our revenue and benefits team. So we are confident we're capturing everybody in terms of their entitlement to it. We will look into it in terms of the underspend position, but does reflect our budgeted position as at the end of December. Also reflects the additional funding that we've received from the Scottish Government, as well as our own budgets for the delivery of the increased rate, both in primary and secondary, through the pandemic and into this financial year. But we will look into it. We're certainly using that underspend, obviously, to support all children through the resource position as we move forward. And the outturn position is also suggesting an underspend. But if there is anything of any concern, we'll come back to you on that.
Thank you very much, Louise. Councillor Logan.
Right, thanks very much. When I was listening there, I know a lot of the contracts are all set, and we've got contracts, probably transport, catering, utilities, maybe various other things that I haven't picked up. With the ongoing situation of utility bills going up, catering, food, you go to the supermarket going up, transport, the various things. Transport or petrol or diesel or whatever it is you put in is steadying as we speak, but it could just shoot right back up again. The contracts that we set, are they secure, or can they be maybe changed, you know, like midstream? And are we looking to put these into sort of a risk register as really high risks? Because I would think that they are, especially maybe transport. Where I live, there's a high percentage of pupils that need transport or they never get to, you know, their place. So I just wondered if the set budgets are set and nothing can happen, or could there be adjustments that would see them rocket? Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen. Tori, did you want to make a brief comment on that one? Louise, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of our utilities, we do have set pricing for our utilities across the financial year, and that's based on the pricing set in advance through the Scotland Excel contract. Obviously, in relation to next financial year, our colleagues in the finance strategy team will review that, and we're working as part of the Council's financial strategy in terms of building in the increased cost of utilities. So that is being provided for. We do have temporary budgets in to support the transport situation. Obviously, it has been quite challenging this year in terms of the financial implications of the operational situation, and we don't have anything fixed yet, and we are looking like that will increase next year. But we are working closely both with Lynn's team and our colleagues in SPT in terms of trying to work through the negotiations of those particular contracts with a review with the individual contractors.
Thank you, Louise. Councillor Logan, is that okay? Are you coming back in?
So obviously we are looking at it as, obviously, risk register-wise, that there are high risks to the running of your department. And if things don't steady or get worse, is there a way maybe we would look at, or need to bring back to the Council, other ways of maybe working with transport? Or, I mean, it doesn't look as if it's going to be short-term. So I'm assuming they're high risk and that we're watching it constant.
Yeah, you're right, they are high risk and we are reviewing it. We're in close contact, we're meeting with SPT regularly, just with a real review, because obviously it's not sustainable in terms of our financial position, but we're doing everything we can really to try to negotiate these as best we can in terms of the impact for us.
Okay, do we have any further questions? No members have indicated on Conferro. And on that, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
And that takes us to agenda item number 4, the capital budget monitoring 22-23, pages 21 to 24 in your papers. And I would invite Lorraine O'Hannigan to speak.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, committee. Agenda item 4 then is on page 21, as the Chair said, and it's the standard capital budget monitoring report, the third for the current financial year, and it reflects the same time period as the revenue report, that's to the end of December 2022. So section 3 gives you the background and just generally explains how the budget is based on the overall capital programme, which we reported to the last meeting on the 15th of November, with amendments totalling a net decrease of £690,000, which were approved by Executive Committee in late November last year. Those are detailed in Appendix A of your report for your information, and that gives us a revised budget for the year of £13.918 million. Section 5 details the financial implications, and Section 5.1 particularly notes the total capital programme for the year being the £13.918 million. In terms of spend anticipated for the year, we've been working with colleagues in Housing and Technical Resources, and the current working projections show a spend of £14.5 million, so an overspend in terms of expected spend of £582,000. Now, this is mainly due to the timing of spend on the multi-year Jackton Primary School project. And as we've noted in section 5.2, we've got an overall funding package for the project in place. This is just a timing allocation between one year and the next, and this happens quite frequently as we approach year end. And we've got the allocation in next financial year, so any overspend that we incur this year will be offset by the budget available from 23-24. Conversely, spend in relation to Castlefield Primary School extension, Clyde Terrace Nursery, Crawford Dyke adaptation of nursery to classrooms, and also the Uddingston Nursery expansion are all estimated to be slightly lower than anticipated this year, and will require the budget as we move into 23-24 rather than the current year. And again, funding is available for these projects, and that'll just carry forward into the next year. And as I say to members quite frequently, capital are a bit more flexible than revenue in that respect, and we have a bit of flexibility across the years. Finally, section 5.4 notes the anticipated spend was 8.028 million to the end of December, and we had spend incurred of 7.730 million, so an underspend of just under 300,000. And that's reflecting, again, the timing of payments on a couple of projects, including Newton Farm Primary School Extension and the Education ICT project. So I would look then to refer committee back to the recommendations in section 2 and ask that the education budget of 13.918 and spend to the 29th of December of 7.730 million and the outturn for the financial year of 14.5 million be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Just a reminder, the recommendations are available on page 21 in section 2.1. No members have indicated on Conferro that they wish to speak or any further questions. Do we have anybody in the room who would like to make any questions? No one, and no one's indicated online. So on that note, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. And that takes us to agenda item number 5, the workforce monitoring September to November 2022, and that's on pages 25 to 32, and could I invite Eileen McPake to speak to the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So this is the Education Resources Workforce Monitoring information for September to November 2022. So in the report, section 4 outlines attendance statistics for committee, and the details are in Appendix 1. So the absence rate for the resource for November 22 is 6.2% compared to a council-wide figure of 6.5%. This is increased by 1.4% compared to the previous month, and compared to the figure last year, it's decreased by 0.5%. All of that projects to an annual average predicted for the resource of 4.8% compared to a council-wide figure of 6.0%. Moving on then, sections 4.2 to 4.5, the details are in Appendix 2, and the main points are that during the period there were 586 occupational health referrals, There were 5 disciplinary hearings. There was no grievances or dignity at work issues raised. There was 520 accidents or incidents recorded during the period, and there were 55 leavers, and of them 38% of them completed exit interviews. The details of vacant posts during the period are in Appendix 2A, and 75 posts became vacant. 72 of them will be filled, 2 will be held pending a review of the service, and 1 will be filled on a fixed term basis. So if I can refer committee back to the recommendation in section 2.0 and ask that the workforce monitoring information for education resources for the period September to November 2022 be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eileen. And just a reminder, the recommendations are available in section 2.1 on page 25 of the papers. Councillor Clark has indicated that he wishes to speak.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for that report. Page 26, 5.1, was this figure of a decrease of 60 expected for this time of year as we get out of COVID?
Generally, at that time of the year, because it covers the end of term, then you will see a decrease. The staffing watch figure just gives a snapshot at certain points during the year. And as I say, because that covers the end of term, then you will see a decrease, and then you might see a subsequent increase later on during the year.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how it compares to the previous years. Has there been any sort of difference? Obviously, we're not fully out of COVID, but we're coming out of it. Has there been any difference which we've seen or expected?
Without having the detail to hand, I don't have that to hand, but anecdotally we do know that, for example, we had more people that retired, and while not specifically indicating that that was related to COVID, but we do know, as I say, across the board, not just within education resources, we do know that across the board that we are certainly seeing a lot more movement of staff. As I say, while they're not specifically indicating it's related to COVID, we do know that it certainly has had an impact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Now I'm looking at page 29 of the report. I notice that the medical examinations have gone up from 68 to 87, but more worrying, the violent incidents have gone up from 309 to 468, and also the violent incidents for verbal have also gone up from 20 to 36. Is there any reason behind it, and is there anything being done to address this?
The number that's reported within the period is the accidents that have actually been reported during the period, not necessarily that they all took place during the period. And what we do know is there was a delay in input in some of the figures in terms of the information that's provided. And in fact, over 200 of these accidents and incidents took place out with the period. So there's further instructions that have been issued to ensure that the accident and incident information is reported more timeously. In addition to that, there is a number of pieces of work that are ongoing. We're working with our trade union colleagues in terms of looking at violent and physical incidents and what can be done in terms of how we support our staff. In addition to that, there's currently a national survey that's out in relation to this issue, and as well as that, the inclusion team have been going round all of the learning communities and updating them in terms of what's to be done in terms of, as I say, supporting pupils and supporting staff in terms of violent incidents and what should happen. So there's quite a number of areas of work that are going on in relation to this.
Supplementary. The violent incidents and verbal ones and physical ones, how are they broken down? Is it how are they compartmentalised, and are they broken down into different factors?
Sorry, when it's reported and it comes through to either it's first looked at in terms of the school where it's taken place, and then also it's looked at in terms of the sort of health and safety implications. So there is probably quite a bit of information in terms of how it's broken down and how it's categorised. It could well be it's in relation to, you know, it could be the location, it could be the kind of type of school it is, it could also be the age of the pupil or the type of the pupil. So yeah, there is quite a different number of ways that these could be categorised.
Okay. Is it possible that we can get the different categories, please, for sent out, just to see what categories of incidents there are that are getting reported, or if there's any slippage in them?
Yeah, we can look at the kind of categories in terms of what people categorise them when they report them, and then how that's then.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no further members have indicated their wish to speak. So on that note, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And that takes us to agenda item number 6, the Q2 Progress Report 22-23. It's available on pages 33 to 60 of your papers. And could I invite Des Dixon to speak to the report?
Good morning, everybody. This report on page 33 provides a performance and progress update on the measures and actions in the Education Resources Plan for 2022-23 and for the Q2 period, which covers the 1st of April through until the 30th of September. So it's almost 4 months old. In paragraph 3, we highlight the golden thread aspect of performance reporting, whereby our actions and measures align to the Council's priorities in the Council Plan Connect, and to our 5 key priorities for education, which we commonly refer to as a strategy on a page. This is done through the Council's improved system, using the colour coding system to assess our progress. In paragraph 3, also highlights that the pandemic had a knock-on effect on children's well-being and learning, given the extent of periods of closure for schools during the pandemic period. Moving to paragraph 5 and in appendix 2, we show in detail the extent of the progress made in relation to the 60+ measures and actions we have in the Education Resources Plan. We also note that in paragraph 5.2, we have no amber or red measures to highlight, and given that this is up to the 30th September and is just at the start of the school year. In paragraph 5.3, we are able to show some key achievements which are aligned to our Council Plan and again our 5 priorities. And for example, we had 2 Scottish Education Award winners in 2022, namely Netherburn Primary School and the Youth, Family and Community Learning Team for their Mobilise Music project, quite highly prestigious awards. Again, looking at the awards, both Larkhall Academy and St Andrews and St Bride's High School achieved the General Teaching Council for Scotland Excellence in Professional Learning Award and Quality Mark status, and that is around continuing professional development and professional learning amongst staff. And of course, literacy is obviously a priority for us, and over 700 odd people attended events to mark International Literacy Day, as well as ongoing work within our schools, and we had a successful mental health conference. And needless to say, one close to all our hearts at the moment, over 430 young people in P5, P7 took part in what was a highly successful, what we call Cause One Schools Climate Change Conference in October. So at this time, work still continues in our schools and services to take forward the priorities in the Education Resources Plan, and a further update will be provided at Q4. So this morning, Chair, the committee is asked to approve the recommendations in Para 2 on page 33, which are that the Education Resources Plan Q2 Progress Report, as summarised in paragraph 5.2, attached as Appendix 2 of this report, be noted, that the key achievements made by Education Resources to date, as detailed in paragraph 5.3 of this report, be noted, and that there are no areas for improvement in terms of the colour coding, and that it be noted that there were no measures identified as report later at Q4 last year, as summarised in paragraph 5.5. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Des, for that report, and thank you for drawing attention in particular to the success and recognition of different aspects of South Lanarkshire education. As the Acting Chair of Education, that's very encouraging to hear, and I believe the committee members would share that with me. Councillor Clark has indicated his wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that report. I was going to save it till the celebrating success item, but I would like to welcome the awards received for Netherburn Primary and Larklaw Academy, both schools within my ward. It is very welcome to see the good work that is going on in our schools. My question is on the Climate Schools Conference. Obviously, some of us attended that event. It was very well run by the pupils and staff involved. My question is around how successful do we think that's been? I know the paper talks about promoting various initiatives, such as the Eco Initiative, teaching resources and the food waste pilot. Have we had many uptake of these sort of things? How successful has it been with schools post the event?
Morning. Yeah, at the end of the conference, we issued a kind of a pledge list, and we sent out to all of the schools. It was an IT kind of easy access. It was a Padlet, so it had all of the resources that was used at the event. All of the games and the activities, the speeches, some of the video links from the TEDx speakers, all of that was kind of put back out to the schools, along with the pledges that we had, or the young people had come up with. I think it was about 10 pledges, and they are all connected to the themes of tears, transport, influencing, eating, recycling, the 3 Rs, and the Rs. I've forgotten the last one. S. Anyway, however, it's went out of my head. What we asked the primary schools to do was take that away and think about doing the same thing in their own school. So there was a school pledge form and there was an individual pledge form as well. So schools could use that at local level, whether it was individual children or classes or whatever, they could use that initiative. So far, I think we've had about 6 or 7 schools that have ran their own mini COS event and actually mirrored the complete process that we know of. But we're about to take a kind of sweep take on what else the schools have done in relation to the back of the kind of the vibe that came out of the COS1 event. In terms of some of the projects we have, the waste project started. I think we've got about a dozen schools doing that. It was an initiative that was used at the event where once the children had had their lunch, there were scales, and what they didn't use was going into this bucket and it was getting amalgamated. So we devised, along with community resources, a kind of programme about healthy eating, but also about waste. And there's about, I think, as I say, maybe 12 schools running that project just now. We've got some funding to get some resources together, so they're running that. Once that's complete, we intend to kind of move that on. So we do need to take a sweep, I think, of schools, primary schools in particular, to see what they've been using and what they've been doing to kind of get some good practice. In terms of PR, I know that the council is intending to look at maybe an initiative around raising awareness about climate emergency, and we were hoping to piggyback on the top of that within the schools and use that as another promotional tool. We did have a sort of social media side going when we had COP26, and we had it going when we had COS1, but we need to try and reinvigorate that and see if we can get our high school children onto that. So when that launches for the council, I think it would be good that it would raise the profile everywhere. And then on the secondary side, the young people that were involved in delivering the COS1 want to do something around waste and recycling in the high schools. So we've started discussions with community and enterprise about how we can do that. We basically need to do an audit, really, of how that works, because we were getting mixed messages about children not putting things in the correct bins, not enough understanding about which bin was for which product, etc. So we're hoping to do something around that in the secondary school.
Thank you. It's good to see that the work is ongoing rather than it being a one-off event. So thanks for that answer.
Okay, no further members have indicated their wish to speak. I'd just like to thank Councillor Cart for bringing to our attention the Climate School Conference. That was a fantastic event, particular opportunity to milk a cow, which isn't something you get to do daily. So I know that was well received by our young people and our staff, having spoke to them retrospective to the event. Now can we agree the report, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. And that takes us to agenda item number 7, an update report, and that's on pages 69 to 72 in your papers, and could I invite Anne Donaldson to speak to the report.
That's me now, thank you. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to extend the post of Attachment Development Officer to continue implementation of the attachment strategy within the wider context of South Lanarkshire's attachment-informed approach. In terms of background to the paper, Section 3 describes how the attachment strategy was launched in June 2020 and promotes better experience of attachment for South Lanarkshire's children and young people, particularly within early years and education settings. Paragraphs 3.2 and 3.3 detail that the strategy forms the basis of South Lanarkshire's attachment-informed approach, which is central to supporting an attachment-informed, trauma-sensitive workforce, with the aim of reducing the impact of adverse childhood events for the most vulnerable children and young people. The strategy supports action detailed in the Getting It Right for Every Child in South Lanarkshire's Children's Services Plan 21 to 23 and reinforces the message about the importance of relationships as outlined in the Promise, which is our national pledge to care experienced children and young people. Section 4 details the progress made in implementation of the strategy, and paragraph 4.1 describes how a range of initiatives have been introduced to support staff with implementation, including that all education establishments and services have been asked to nominate an attachment lead and ambassador to support implementation within their own settings. Leads and ambassadors are invited to quarterly networking events in each locality, which are designed to help share practice and support staff. And locality-based Google Classrooms have been established to support staff to share resources and good practice. In addition, an SLC Twitter account at SLC Attachment has been created to share practice and resources, and a quarterly newsletter is distributed to all education and early years staff. Following a review of nurture practice and provision across the authority, a new model of attachment-informed practice was introduced with the aim of making clear the connections between our attachment strategy, our nurture principles, and promoting positive behaviour and understanding promoting positive relationships and understanding distressed behaviour. And this is represented in the diagram, which is here and is made available to members this morning. So a copy of the diagram can be collected just from the desk at the end there, and additional copies will be made available in the members area for those attending the meeting virtually today. Paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 describe the establishment of the Attachment Steering Group and the continued rollout of training to staff to ensure consistency and understanding about the importance of attachment in promoting good mental health and lifelong resilience. Section 5 outlines the next steps in relation to implementation and describes how the steering group will continue to oversee and advise throughout the coming year. Paragraphs 5.2 and 5.3 detail the development of two important resources: a good practice guide to attachment-informed practice and an accreditation tool, which will enable staff to evaluate their practice and, importantly, provide an opportunity to acknowledge good practice. Para 5.4 lists further activity that will take place, including youth attachment ambassador training, which is already underway, and attachment-informed workshops for parents and carers. And I would ask members to note that Section 7, financial implications, details that costs can be met from within existing resources. Turning back then to Section 2, paragraph 2.1, Committee is asked to approve that to support the sustained implementation, application and evaluation of South Lanarkshire's attachment-informed approach, the extension of the post of Development Officer, which is currently a 12-month secondment, for up to 23 months is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report, Anne, and thank you for your discussions with myself around that when we were initially discussing it. I would particularly welcome the good practice guide. There is excellent practice. Having had the opportunity to visit schools and parent councils, there is excellent practice throughout our schools in South Lanarkshire, and it is important that it is recognised and shared for the benefit of our staff and our children. Do we have any questions on the report? We have Councillor Loudon online.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Anne, for going through that. I feel as a committee we've been kept very well informed about the progress of the work on attachment over a number of years now, and I'm very happy to support the recommendation regarding the post to continue supporting that approach. I was very interested to hear about the rollout of the youth ambassador training for young people in secondary schools. And earlier in the paper, we obviously have, as part of the implementation for staff ambassadors, we've got the fact that they're invited to networking events to take place in each locality to make sure that that practice is shared, that they're supported, and they've got locality-based Google Classroom support as well, again, to share resources and good practice. And I wonder if any consideration has been given to giving the youth attachment ambassadors that same sort of support and the same sort of opportunity to share with their peers who are ambassadors in other areas, their work and their experiences and their practice. I think that would be a really good opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. The youth ambassador work is in its early stages, but if you follow and no doubt you do follow the attachment, SLC attachment on Twitter, you'll see some examples of their work and our youth ambassadors speaking, but the idea is that they do provide peer support to each other and to other young people who are undergoing the training. So yes, your comment's absolutely noted and something that we would be supporting.
Thank you very much, Anne. Do we have any further questions? Nope, no members have wished an interest to speak. And on that note, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
That takes us to agenda item number 8, the transfer of the functions of Education Appeals Committee to the Scottish Tribunals. This is available on pages 73 to 86 of your papers. And again, I would like Anne to speak to the report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the Scottish Government's consultation on the transfer of the functions of Education Appeals Committees to the Scottish Tribunals. Section 3 of the report details the background to the consultation, and paragraphs 3.1 to 3.3 describe the current system of Education Appeals Committees. Paragraph 3.1 notes that local authorities are required to set up and maintain education appeal committees, and that the majority of appeals considered by these relate to placing requests, with a smaller number relating to exclusions from school. Paragraph 3.2 notes that appeal committees are established under Section 28D of the Education Scotland 1980 Act, and goes on to describe membership of the committees. And paragraph 3.3 acknowledges that in practice, appeal committees usually consist of elected councillors and local people with strong experience in the education sector, such as parents of children of school age. Paragraphs 3.5 to 3.7 outline the role of a tribunal. Paragraph 3.5 notes that the Tribunals Scotland Act 2014 created a new two-tier structure for devolved tribunals, organised into the first-tier tribunal and the upper tribunal, which hears appeals from the first-tier tribunal, and these are known collectively as Scottish tribunals. Paragraph 3.6 goes on to explain that education appeal committees are listed as one where functions can be transferred into the new tribunal system, specifically to the Health and Education Chamber, which currently deals with ASN tribunals. And it should be noted that the 2014 Act contains powers to make the secondary legislation required to amend the Education Scotland Act to enable the functions of appeal committees to be transferred. Section 4 details the history of the consultation proposals. Paragraphs 4.1 to 4.3 describe the evidence base from the year 2000 until the mid-2000s, illustrating that the appeals process was unsatisfactory in a number of ways, and paragraph 4.4 describes that the Scottish Government does acknowledge that the evidence base is old. Paragraph 4.5 goes on to explain that this consultation provides an opportunity for users of appeal committees and those involved in their delivery to provide up-to-date evidence of the operation of appeals committees, and an opportunity to give views on the future of the education appeals process in Scotland. And the proposal is outlined in section 5. Paragraph 5.2 details the 3 consultation questions, which are: number 1, do you agree that appeal committees should transfer to the Scottish tribunals, and if so, why? Do you consider that appeal committees should remain with local authorities but with improvements to how they operate? And if so, what changes would you like to see? And finally, do you consider that no changes should be made to how appeal committees operate, and if so, why? Paragraph 5.3 highlights that Appendix 1 provides a summary of the consultation as presented by the Scottish Government, and paragraph 5.4 highlights that Appendix 2 sets out the Council's response to the 3 consultation questions. Section 7 details the financial implications of the proposal. Subparagraph 711 details that whilst there has not been a comprehensive costing exercise, the Scottish Government estimates that based on other transfers, the annual cost of a move of appeal committees to the Scottish tribunals would be around £500,000 to £700,000, and additional set-up costs may be required. Subparagraph 712 outlines some of the additional costs to central and local government in terms of staffing and representation. And paragraph 73 states the point that councils are not anticipating cuts to their budget should there be a move of functions, and it is anticipated that any additional costs to local government should be considered and funding provided. Turning back then to the recommendations at section 2, the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations. That the case for the transfer of the functions of Education Appeals Committees to the Scottish Tribunals presented by the Scottish Government as shown in Appendix 1 be noted, and that the Council's response to the Scottish Government's consultation on the transfer of the functions of Education Appeals Committees to Scottish Tribunals by the 6th of February 2023, as shown in Appendix 2, be approved, with any additions or qualifications as may be approved by this committee for onward transmission to the Government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you to all the council and education staff who were involved in formulating a response on behalf of the council. Having a look at the papers, it was a clearly sizable and meaty task, so thanks again to all your staff and to yourself, Anne. Do we have any questions on this report? Councillor Razak.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 75. With the cuts to local government funding, they're talking about 500,000 to 700,000 that the Scottish Government will be paying in a period of austerity just now. I'm surprised that they'd be considering that, especially adding extra burden on to the costs to government. The second thing is the cost to the council. I know there's no mention of cost to the council, but I've been sitting in appeals for several years now, and the thing about one of the main criteria says that in case if it's successful, then you need to create another classroom, if I remember correctly. So if it's gone outside to a party, if there is successful appeals and the council's forced to increase the number of classrooms, then there's going to be an increase to the school, there's going to be an increase with staffing, and there'll be a general increase. So I'm puzzled by the fact that we are saying that there's not going to be a cost to the council, but I think there will be a cost to the council then, surely.
Thank you, Councillor. The consultation response does note that we would predict a cost to the Council in terms of increased representation within a tribunal context around the legal representation for the Council within those contexts, and also in additional officer time. What we didn't do within the consultation response was predict the outcomes of particular appeals in the way that you've described, but I think that's something potentially to consider. But other parties that responded to the consultation included our colleagues in finance, so they were very alert to the fact that there could be, significant additional costs to the council. The other question that colleagues in finance asked was there a financial memorandum that came along with the consultation paper, and there wasn't. So the costs that are quoted within the context of the consultation are, a guess, I suppose, at this stage anyway.
Thank you, Anne. Just now we're working on a budget with cuts and everything else. We're working on cuts and we're looking at making savings and everything else. And I'm just concerned that taking this away from the council, taking away from the councillors that are sitting in the appeals and passing it, centralising this time just now currently might be a bit foolish, because I think that the impact could be that we have any more classes, and with the more classes it's going to cost us a lot more. And I think that is a significant concern, especially just now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Razak. And Tony?
Thanks, Councillor Zak. I think probably as Anne was saying as well, we want to distinguish this though, that families themselves have the right to go through that appeals process. What we are saying at the moment, and you'll see from the consultation document itself, is that we believe that's a robust and fair process for those families. And that criteria will not change whether it goes to here within the council or indeed through an appeals process. So we wouldn't want to get involved. We wouldn't want to believe that families are less entitled to a place in a school. We simply apply the criteria. What we're saying in this consultation is we believe that this process is robust. We believe that the elected members involved are well supported by the administration services within here, and families get a good hearing and a proper hearing as well. Whether that moves to a tribunal, they should have the same hearing whether it's held here or whether it's with a tribunal. So we wouldn't really want to get involved in whether there be a cost. If they have the right to attend a school, they have the right to attend a school. I think that what we are saying is we believe that the options within here give us it's a strong option already. And we're also suggesting there could be further support. We can have further independent observers coming in, for example. That's one of the recommendations that we would make. So if people are uncertain by it, we can reassure them that this is a robust internal process.
Councillor Razak, would you like to add anything further?
No, I totally agree with you, and I believe that would be an excellent solution, is bringing in an observer. To do that, then it's a bit of a sledgehammer to a nutshell, to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Razak. And Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to echo your points, Chair, welcoming the work that officers have done in putting this together and the fact that it was brought to committee and brought before us, given the tight timescale that was around the dates here. I think in general the council response is balanced and well considered, in particular the points that have been made around the importance of training and induction of members being kept updated, not only so that we've got that local knowledge, but also so that members have got a good understanding about local delivery, in particular policies and practices as well. I also thought the point was well made about the burden on local authorities that processing a high number of appeals in a short period of time can make. And there were also some very good points around both some of the practical and some of the psychological and emotional considerations for parents and carers in terms of where they're being asked to attend and who will be present. It's been a while since that evidence has been gathered and considered, as Anne had said, and the paper sets out. And it's very important, as Tony has just said, it's important that families get a good hearing as they have the right to. So in general, I think it's been a good exercise to capture all of this information. I welcome the council's response, and I'm sure, as others will be watching the national picture emerge from the consultation with interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Loudon, and I'd welcome the points you made. I think we're very much in agreement around the practicalities there. Councillor Allison.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, just agree with the response as well that Tony has put in. On the second appendix, the question is asked, do you agree with the committee should be transferred to Scottish tribunals? A nice concise answer of no, but should we not be emphasising why it would be no in there, in that box? In particular, I would think the harm that it could do to education in general because of the lack of the local knowledge, etc.
Thank you, Councillor. We expand on the point, I think, in the response to question 2, but I'm maybe picking up that you feel that it's maybe not, the point isn't strongly enough made, or? Yeah, exactly. At point 2, you're talking about what alterations we could make locally for the decision-making still to be locally. This is why it should not be transferred to central government. No is the right answer, but why? Make them sure they're aware of what they're doing. Thank you.
And Councillor Logan.
Thanks. Just on that point then, if there's going to be a change, if we agree this morning, could we then say that, say, the leaders or the chair and the leader or whoever just has a run through just to make sure that we're agreeing that we'll not have time to bring it back to another education committee. I agree with everything that has been said this morning, from monetary to people needing to feel that they're welcome to come, and observers is fine. And I just, because I have sat in them for such a long time, I just felt it's proper that we say that I have never ever been at a meeting where people or education officers come in with hard set, rules and regulations. You have to follow the rules and regulations. Or indeed any colleagues that I have sat with have sort of had a hard and fast view. People have been treated very fairly, very nicely. And one of the things, and it's hard then to put into words when you're sending it away to a sort of government body, is that sometimes not on just what school should you go, I would like my child to go there. Sometimes it's for childcare, sometimes it's for something else. But the ones that's the most heartbreaking for me is if a child is not fitting in at the school and has got into trouble in the school and various things. Now, as local people, we then would like to think, well, what else could we do to help that child? Not to punish it, or not to, sort of say, well, you're excluded, or you're this or that, because there's a human aspect. There's parents or carers upset. Children are upset. They don't set out just to be coming here to have to listen to all the misdemeanours or whatever else has happened. So there's a human aspect, and I think that the local part of it is so important, because you can, as soon as you start to speak to people and you hear and you see what's going on, but the overriding thing for me is, well, no, we don't just want to exclude you, or we don't want to do this or that, but what other things could we do to help that person? And I think that will get lost if it's sent away to just a bureaucracy somewhere. I don't think that wee personal touch will be there. And it's hard to put into words, but that's one of the things when I was reading it. It wasn't so much the one part, it's that part. It's the human element will be lost, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Logan. I'd agree with your comments that local decisions should be left in the hands of local, capable hands, as we've known for years of experience. Councillor Razak.
Chair, I apologise for coming back in. I was meant to say this is partly to do with, my next comment's partly to do with this, and what it's about is the placement requests by police officers on grounds of safety, because if the officers are working in a certain area, so for instance, if a police officer is working in Hamilton and they're looking for their child to be placed outside the area they're working in, then that should be a consideration, because I know a couple of the appeals I sat before historically, that was one of the grounds that they were asking for the child not to be sent to a certain school because they were based around that area. And the reason was that if they ever, say for instance, arrested anyone and they were taken to court, then it could be a aggrieved parent that from that they're going to the same school, their children. And I think that might be merit an investigation or a discussion, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Razak. Yourself, Anne.
Very clear.
That's us.
Just to be clear, the grounds of appeal are fixed in the legislation, and there's nothing specific in relation to the policemen and their children in terms of where they work. The appeal committee is constrained by all the grounds of appeal that are fixed in statute, as would a tribunal be, to go back to the earlier point. And it's a question of whether or not the circumstances that are presented by the appellant at the appeal are appropriate with regard to the particular grounds on which they're making their appeal. And it would really be very much case specific and be looked at in that way.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Razak.
Thank you for the reply. I understand. That's why I said at the very start that this is not on the grounds of appeal. This is more on the grounds of placement. And if a placement request is made, that may be taken into consideration a bit more than it is just now. And the only reason I mentioned appeal was that there were 2 appeals made from the police officers' appearance, and that was the grounds, and we did reject it on those grounds, so I understood that side of it. It's more about the school policy more than anything else, which is in the remit, surely, and to say that should be understood as well, because at the end of the day, there is a concern, because if a police officer has, say for instance, charged a parent at a school, then there could be possible bad blood, and there could be possible issues from that, and that was a concern the police officer raised, and I understood that concern, and that's the reason I'm asking. I'm talking about placements, not about appeals.
Thank you very much, Councillor Razak. And do we have any further comments? No, thank you very much, Member, for your contribution on that report. Just on Councillor Allison's point, I would very much stress that, in my personal opinion, the Council's response is robust, concise and clear. However, I'm happy, along with my colleague, Councillor Kerr, to engage in further discussions with officers regarding Section 3 of the report to see if there's anything further we can add, just to add some maybe extra to the report. But if that's the end of the contributions, could I ask the committee to agree with the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Now, colleagues, we have just approached the hour mark before the items for noting. It is my intention to take the items for noting individually, given the important nature of some of the reports. So I propose that we take a 5-minute break and then see then 5. That's okay? Thank you. Okay, everyone, if we can get started. Just during the break, Councillor Loudon indicated that she would like to make a point of order. So, Councillor Loudon, I'm happy for you to come in.
Hi, thanks for your indulgence, Chair. I appreciate your offer on the last item to reflect the committee's discussion today and have that reflected in the final submission, which goes in to the consultation. I was trying to come back in to ask this question, so I apologise for doing it this way. But could I ask if we could see a final copy of that as a committee before it's submitted, if that is going to be changed from what we've got in front of us today?
Yeah, that was my intention, Councillor Loudon, to have a further discussion with the officer just to reflect the nature of the discussion today. And if any further amendments are made, we can bring it to the attention of the Council by the best means as ascertained by the officers, if that's okay with yourself.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, that takes us to agenda item number 9. The Achievement of Literacy and Numeracy Curriculum for Excellence Levels 21-22 is available on pages 87 to 94 of your papers, and could I invite Carol Mackenzie to speak to the report.
Is that me? Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I'm pleased this morning to provide an update on the recently published Literacy and Numeracy Curriculum for Excellence Levels for session 21-22. And a bit like Desi's report, by nature of data and its publication, you know, this is already fairly out of date, if you're like. This is last year's results, and there's work obviously ongoing this year for the students' results. So section 3 gives a bit of background. Members of the committee will be familiar with this, that the achievement of curriculum for excellence levels are published each year around December, and that's based on the previous June submission. And the published information is based on the professional judgment of teachers, and it is collated annually. There was quite a bit of disruption around the collection of CFE levels in the last few years due to COVID. There was no data collected in 1920, and there was no S3 data collected in 2021. So we are playing, if you like, a catch-up game with that. So the data set gives you results for all the primary literacy and numeracy, as well as the third and fourth levels for the secondary school, and also provides information relating to the attainment gap between children from the most deprived backgrounds and those from the least. And in paragraph 3.6, it also mentions that there are a very small number of pupils that have long-term, significant and complex additional support needs that makes them unlikely to progress through expected levels, and these pupils are recorded as children following individual milestones and are included in the data presented. So turning over to section 4, members will note that achievement of a level of CFE, curriculum for excellence, is judged based on a holistic view of a child's achievements across a range of evidence over a period of time. And that may be observations from the children, it may be jotter and coursework that the teachers look at, and some schools do use standardised assessments to contribute to the process of making accurate assessments. Because CFE levels are based on teacher professional judgment, there's been a lot of work within South Lanarkshire around making sure that there is moderation activities taking place within schools and also across schools to ensure that one teacher's judgment is the same as another teacher's judgment in another school. And we've been extensively involved in working both in conjunction with Education Scotland and in particular with colleagues within our West Partnership. And schools, once they have this data, use this internally to inform next steps in progress, and obviously as part of the reporting to parents. And there is a further link around the Scottish Government's website noted in section 4. So on to section 5, the summary of results. So 5.1 gives you some figures about how many people were assessed, and also notes that session 21-22 was the first year in which a full data set was collected for the 4 stages, P1, P4, P7 and S3, since COVID-19. And I think before I get into the individual data sets in terms of literacy and numeracy, it is worth acknowledging the work that our schools have put in to ensuring that they have come back post-COVID after a period of significant disruption, and tried to muster all their energy, resources and expertise to ensure that children and young people have been achieving after a significant period of disruption. And I think that has probably shown itself out most within our early years in terms of some of our youngest children who perhaps missed out on some of their nursery experiences. So schools have been working very hard, and we're pleased to report today that their hard work is paying off. So in terms of 5.2, which is primary literacy, we are still sitting significantly above the national average at 71.3%. We have improved since last year by 1.1%. But there is no room for complacency here. We need to keep doing better. We need to keep working to ensure our literacy results in our primary schools are better and better year on year. There is still a significant gap in literacy between the children who are least deprived and the children who are most deprived. And as I referred to just a minute ago, that is particularly evident in our early stages where children perhaps missed out on quite a lot of schooling or experience preschool. So there is some targeted work, in fact, a great deal of targeted work going on this current session to particularly focus on closing that literacy gap in our primary schools. A lot of our SEF money, which was referred to by Louise earlier, is going on projects to look at early level literacy, and we're hoping to reap the fruits of our labour this June when our new results come in, and I intend to bring a further paper to committee before the end of this session, just detailing what that support for literacy actually looks like. Moving on to the secondary literacy, 3rd and 4th level, our secondary schools are punching way above their weight in terms of both the national average and in terms of the gap. So in terms of 3rd level literacy for secondary schools, at 90.5%, it's well above the national average of 85.5%. And although we still have a literacy gap, of 9%, it compares very favourably to the national figure of 16.3 percentage points. So again, more work to be done, but by S3 in secondary school, our children are performing very well, especially compared to national figures. That's mirrored onto 4th level literacy, and it's well above the national average of 47.7%. And the gap in that measure has narrowed significantly. It's still a big gap. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it has narrowed, and it is now the smallest gap since 2016-17. And I think it's interesting to note that we had a very successful data day a couple of weeks ago where the primaries and the secondaries worked together on their data and looked at trend and to see what both sectors could start to learn from each other in terms of that accelerated progress that some of the young people are making when they get to secondary school, and primaries working with secondary colleagues to really unpick some of this data more closely. Moving on to primary numeracy. Again, we're sitting above the national average. We're sitting at 79.1% compared to the national average of 77.9%, and we're pleased with that. But again, we want it to be even better. Again, numeracy levels have improved by 1.2%, and they are actually now higher than the 2018-19 levels, which was obviously pre-pandemic. The gap has slightly narrowed, which again is good progress. And again, we're doing a bit of work with schools to see, and I think this has been mentioned at committee before, that perhaps numeracy is a more linear way of learning and more straightforward, and the children and young people have perhaps made better progress in numeracy in some regards than they have in literacy. And again, that's why our efforts this year are focusing largely on the literacy aspects. In terms of secondary numeracy at third level, again, we're sitting above the national average. And although we indeed do have a gap, it compares favourably against the national figure of 15.0 percentage points. At fourth level numeracy, we have 65.1% achievement of fourth level numeracy, and this is the highest level again since 2016-17. Unfortunately, in that measure, the gap is really fairly large, and while it's still better than the national gap, it is the largest poverty-related attainment gap across the measures reported. So there's more work to be done around fourth level numeracy. So paragraph 5.6 kind of sums up the data that our schools are making steady and positive steps in relation to recovery from the pandemic, and with progress being made across most indicators and school stages. And most measures in South Lanarkshire Council have increased since 2021, and almost all measures are sitting above the national average. However, it is noted that the poverty-related attainment gap remains a challenge across the country. However, none of the national data is showing a gap less than pre-pandemic levels. So in a nutshell, the pandemic has served, sadly, to widen that attainment gap, and that's reflected nationally. And within South Lanarkshire Council, while there are some measures where the gap is less than it was, there is some work to be, quite a significant amount of work to be done to ensure that this gap closes, and that is where the targets of our work are going at the moment around our SEF funding and our work with schools. We have provided and continue to provide a number of supports and challenges for schools. This has included, as I mentioned, a specific data day where all the schools came along and were presented with a very detailed pack of analysis of their data for their school and asked to write an action plan about how that data could be further looked at and further worked to improve. We also have provided and continue to provide bespoke support for schools, and also in a new initiative we have identified a number of schools who are punching well above their weight, and we are linking those schools up with schools that need to make some further improvements in their data. But this is not a straightforward exercise. There are many variables within each school. There are different contexts. There are different cohorts of children passing through each stage. So we have to always make sure we are looking out for individuals and individual circumstances, and a lot of the schools rightly and continue are placing health and well-being at the front and centre of the recovery agenda alongside literacy and numeracy. So if I could refer committee back to paragraph 2.1, where the committee is asked to approve the following recommendations: that the curriculum for excellence levels in literacy and numeracy for 2021-22 be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Carol, for that detailed report. I think the graphs within the report certainly exemplifies the impact, the tangible and measurable impact that COVID has had and the pandemic has had on our young people, particularly in our early years. However, some of the statistics are encouraging, particularly in terms of recovery and the national comparison. And I think we've got our South Lanarkshire teachers and the quality learning and teaching that they provide to our young learners to thank for that. Do we have any further questions or comments? Councillor Loudon.
Thank you very much, Chair. With the caveat, obviously, that this is older information now, I agree with the Chair that there's obviously good news in here, not only about the national comparators, but the signs of the gap beginning to narrow in some areas, especially given all that's been said about the pandemic. And I completely agree with what he and Carol have said about the hard work of schools following a significant period of disruption. I appreciate and welcome the offer to bring further information about measures being taken around primary literacy in particular. As Carol said, one of the obvious points to keep an eye on is the poverty-related numeracy gap at 4th level. And I wondered if we could maybe have a focused update on that subject too, and the measures being taken there at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. And just to echo your own comments regarding the amazing work that's been done in terms of the figures and closing the attainment gap. But obviously, we are still not where we should be. And this work has been done despite the cumulative effects of cuts to local authority budgets since 2013, which various analyses, including COSLA, Audit Commission, estimate it being around 9.6%. The spending power of local authorities has been drastically eroded, and including our ability to invest in education and to close the gap. It is a glaring failure of the Scottish Government to achieve one of their key aims and objectives, and has left us in the position after the pandemic of falling further behind and letting down some of our children, and we're still behind to a worrying level. But that is not to say that the work that has been done in South Lanarkshire isn't exceptional, and I acknowledge that. But I would certainly ask colleagues and around within the chamber that we need a radically improved budget settlement to allow us to enhance this work, to support this work, and to make sure that all our children and young people have access to an excellent education and increased life opportunities, and that we are allowed to address and given the resources we need to address the attainment gap and the poverty levels and lift these children to where they should be. We have the talent, we have the staff to do it. We need the support from the Scottish Government, and we need them to stop eroding our powers of investment to be able to provide the public services that we need to within South Lanarkshire, including education for all our children and young people, no matter where they live, no matter where they reside, no matter what their background is. And it's time this situation was reversed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. I very much agree with your comments to that effect. Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think it is pleasing to see that South Lanarkshire is performing better than average statistics throughout Scotland, and I think we need to ensure that our staff, whether they be teachers, even you, Tony, are given the credit that they are due for being able to do that. Two issues I would maybe like to raise here. So, one of them is actually semi-positive. Our dip during COVID was not nearly as much as the Scottish average. Can we learn anything from that to actually benefit what we're going to do from here on? Because I do notice others are catching back up. And I do appreciate what you were saying about what is being done to improve literacy and numeracy in the primary schools. I think, as someone has already said, to have just over 20% of our pupils not achieving what we want in numeracy and nearly 30% in literacy, holds them back regardless of their economic situation for the rest of their life. And I think we do need to do more and find a better way of, in that stage of their lives, because once they hit secondary school, it's more about use of these skills rather than needing to learn them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alison Carroll.
I 100% agree with those comments. I think the observation around our gap dipping less significantly can probably be attributed to the hard work of our schools and our teachers in terms of our remote online learning offer and the really excellent work that they did during the pandemic to make sure that children and young people were engaged in learning, and that families continued to be supported even when our schools were closed. So, Councillor Allison, you're absolutely right, our dip wasn't as significant. However, it has meant that our improvement has not also been as significant, and I absolutely note that in the statistics. We do ask for predictions for schools around this time of year. And while it's not an exact science, we ask our schools to submit what they are estimating at this stage of the year our children will achieve by June. And that serves a number of purposes. It gives us primarily a kind of heads up to where there may be issues emerging in particular schools or learning communities, and we can target support there. So that makes a difference between now and June, and it also gives us an indication of the direction of travel. And that exercise has just been completed, and direction of travel our kind of initial glance seems to be positive this year. It's certainly not going to eradicate the issues that have been presented, but we are confident with the absolute focus that all the teams have on literacy and numeracy, that we will reap some rewards this year in terms of that. We would like our graph to rise in a steeper fashion for June 23. So obviously a further report will be brought back to committee as soon as those figures are available. Thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Few quick points. Obviously, as I had said earlier, completely agree with the phenomenal work by teachers and support staff that have taken place across South Lanarkshire to lead us to this position. But there can be a tendency in here to talk about doom and gloom when it comes to education at a national level, which I do think does a disservice to teachers who are working and support assistants who are working their hardest across Scotland. And we know that there have been various stats floating around. According to the last Eurostat figures, Scotland has the best educated population in Europe. I don't think that's representing a failure in education. It's testament to the hard work of our teachers and our pupils across Scotland that we've got a record number of university places for pupils from deprived communities, and that we've got the highest number of learners receiving Scottish qualifications from the SQA this year since 2017. But just to make those points briefly. However, to go back on the reason I had my hand up, I'd asked at the end of my question if we could have an update on numeracy at stage 4 and the measures which were taken there, which I don't think was picked up on. Just to ask if I could have confirmation of that, please, Chair.
Apologies, Councillor Loudon. I did pick it up, but didn't answer absolutely. What we will do is we'll bring an update to either the next committee or the following one, and we will look at the targeted measures across both literacy and numeracy, and that will give committee a kind of rounded picture of where the work is being targeted. So, of course.
Thank you very much, Carol. I knew you would have. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. And just in response to Councillor Walker's points, the Scottish Government invested £750 million over the lifetime of the last Parliament into closing the attainment gap. and in the next Parliament will invest £1 billion. Now, she obviously doesn't think that's enough, so I'm just wondering where are the proposals of what other service is going to be cut to increase that? We always hear, these calls, but never really any solutions.
And Mr Mulligan.
Thanks, Chair. It's just really a point of clarification I'm seeking here. Some of my officer colleagues from the past will know that I was never very comfortable with data and figures. I'm looking at the section in 4.3 which uses the term aggregated whole school data, and I'm assuming that that means that the primary literacy figure and the numeracy figures are an aggregate of achievement levels at P1, 4 and 7. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Which does mean that, and I'm sure that the staff in education will already be looking at that, when we need to look perhaps at whether the achievement at P7 was considerably better or higher than at P4, or the achievement at P1 was better than P7, because it does mean that you have an average, if you like, of the primary school performance, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to look for. But I'm sure that the officers would agree that what will be important is the targeting of the particular stages to ensure that there isn't one which is, and I use this rather unfairly, is dragging the other two levels down. And it does mean that we have, over the piece, we have a percentage achievement at primary, which is very, very good indeed, but doesn't appear to be quite as good as the achievement level at the secondary stage. And that would suggest to the naive like myself that there's a big gap between primary achievement and secondary. Now, I don't really believe that that is the case, but it is worth perhaps looking into the figures for each of the stages, because it would be disingenuous for us to simply assume that every stage in primary was achieving at that level if it's being averaged out.
Thank you, Mr Mulligan. Again, I agree with all your points. Can I reassure you that the analysis, in terms of the different stages, is done. It's done across the authority, and it is done particularly at school level. So absolutely, where a school has identified, for example, P4 writing is the issue, that's where we would expect their school improvement planning work to focus on, as opposed to just generally literacy across the board. And in almost all schools, there will be variations between stages and achievements. And what we encourage schools to do is ask the question, so why are X% achieving in P4? But by P7, the percentage has dropped or it has increased. So we are actively working with schools who are engaged at that level of analysis on a stage-by-stage. And not only within their own schools, they are given tools to compare directly with schools that have the same characteristics as them. It might not be the neighbouring school, it might be a school across South Lanarkshire somewhere else. So they can say, well, why are our results better than that school, etc. And your point around primary and secondary is well made. It's something we've overtly addressed and, have said to our primary schools, you're not telling us that the secondary schools are fixing all of this, which we don't believe they are. So we are going back and looking at our moderation because in some regards our primary colleagues perhaps are so rigorous in terms of their application of standards that moderation of a level is also a key, because members will note that these teacher professional judgments are based on that. They're not based on, if you like, a test or something external, so that work continues to ensure that teachers are equipped with the skills they need to moderate. But as Councillor Loudon just said, you know, I have to commend the teachers within our classrooms who are doing an excellent job in terms of, you know, making literacy and numeracy an absolute priority for improvement.
Thank you very much, Carol. Mr Milligan, would you like to add anything further? No. Thank you very much. And any members would like to make any further comments or questions? Councillor Logan.
I don't come here with gloom and doom, and I think I write wee notes to the director quite often to tell him how nice I find these schools and different things. So I have not a gloom and doom disposition, so to speak. And I think the teachers work with what they have, resource-wise and various things, to the best, obviously, their ability. And I have a good rapport with the schools within, I just know the ones in my own area. And I think you answered part of my question, because I was getting a wee bit worried when I heard you say that you compare, you know, like that school has got that, and then you look at somebody with higher statistics or whatever, and then you might, you know, say, pair them up. And I thought, well, you can't pair up each area, but if you're saying that you're looking for a school with a similar background, whatever, then I leave that part. But the other part I wanted to ask, and I know this is for a fact, that there's a lot of pupils who wait for diagnosis of various different things for a long time. And the last waiting time that I got for a child who might be on an autistic spectrum or any spectrum could be 1 year, 1 year and a half, which then the child is, in my view, limbo, waiting to get a diagnosis for the school or whoever to try and make a work plan for that child. What happens as well, and I would like to know this, if a pupil has, say, dyslexia and or dyscalculia, and I'd never really heard of dyscalculia till it came across my desk, big time. So I just wonder, you know, does that go into the statistics? Because if somebody has, say, dyslexia, they cannot compete on an even playing field with somebody who is fluent in language and reading and different stuff. So I actually don't like statistics, and I hate league tables. I think it's very unfair. You know, league tables, in my view, if you live in an area where it's easy to go up the league table, I think it should always be done on what has been achieved in that school. And if they went from there to there, in my view, supposing it's, you know, still way in the bottom of the league, that's a great improvement. But it's just that there's a whole lot of different things that's in that mix that you cannot come out. It doesn't show up. But I know that, and I do know that there's long waits for various psychologists and all the things that's required for children. So that must impact somewhere on that as well. But again, I can only speak for my wee area, and I know that we've got good schools and good high school who has got good relations with the community as well. So that's just my part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Logan. And I know from first-hand experiences putting the primary 1 5-year-old children through SNASA, standardised assessments, it can throw up a complete bag of results. A lot of children can do the guessing game and come out favourably better off than some other children. So yeah, it is a bit of a contentious area. Do we have any other members like to make any contributions or comments? And on that point, can we agree to note the report? Agreed. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item number 10, supporting women's health in schools and educational settings. That's page 95 to 122. And could I invite Lynn Sherry to speak to the report?
Okay, thank you very much. Just in terms of this report, is to provide an update on some of the approaches that we take within the school settings. To take us back maybe a little bit in time, last year the Council agreed a motion for officers to consider the necessity, feasibility and implications of implementing a menstruation policy in the workplace, and that included considering that within the school settings as well. It's probably fair to say, I think in my opinion, that South Lanarkshire is proactive on certain aspects of women's health, and we had developed a menopause policy which was already in place, which was meant to give kind of sensitive cognizance to some of the issues that women face at stages of their life. That includes staff within schools, so that policy was about all staff, whether it's school-based or whether it's within other sectors of South Lanarkshire Council. When this motion came forward, Corporate Resources looked at reviewing what was asked in that motion in terms of the entire staffing within South Lanarkshire, which obviously, as I say, includes schools. So we will be guided with guidance that comes from them and how we handle some of the sensitivities around women's health as we move forward. But in terms of schools, we were asked to consider how these things are dealt with in terms of children. So really section 4 in the report, paragraphs 4.1 to 4.4, kind of pick up on some of the things we're involved in within the school setting. Some of it is about legislation, some of it is about the ethos of the school, and some of it is curriculum led. So in terms of legislation at 4.1, it talks about the free provision through the legislation of period products that's recently been introduced, and that we launched some new guidance that we had in place in partnership with our community planning partnership colleagues around the sensitivities of access to products, destigmatisation, etc. That was also coupled with a video presentation that went to all schools within South Lanarkshire. So they're following that guidance about making sure products are available, you know, in all toilets, whether it's girls' toilets, gender neutral, staff toilets, and that we advertise as widely as we can in terms of destigmatisation, that we have assemblies, we have posters, and that we try and open up the topic so that it isn't something that is taboo. And we are moving in that direction, and you can see it in social media too, in terms of women's health. We also asked schools to nominate someone who would be responsible for the period products and menstruation, and that they would look at leading the schools through the guidance that we've issued and putting some of the practical aspects of changing the ethos of schools and improving the ethos of schools to be more open about such things. That includes trying to track absence and spot trends, etc., and make sure that parents, families know that there are products and supports available. And at the back of the guidance, you'll see there is a list of all of the areas where people can seek extra help and information, access to products, etc. There's more information out there, which I have seen schools share on their websites. In terms of education in relation to the learner journey, we have Scottish Government recommendations in terms of curriculum. So puberty and menstruation is taught as part of our personal and social education curriculum. So these subjects are picked up in these debates. Also, we have some resources that relate to health and wellbeing that cover that broad area, but can delve into the area of relationships, sexual health and parenthood, etc. So it kind of broadens out the topic. We have some resources that are NHS Lanarkshire based that we use in our school settings as well. So it was just to bring to attention the committee some of the activities that happen on a day-to-day basis within schools, and that have always been the case. But with the launch of our new guidance in September, and with guidance that will come from corporate colleagues about how we are mindful of staff, we will continue to go forward on that journey. So really just getting back to the report, just to note the Council's position in terms of women's health and the activities that take place within the school settings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Just before I take questions, we are just shy of 15 minutes away from taking a 30-minute break. I'm obviously cautious of members' time constraints and commitments, so I might propose taking the remaining agenda items in block with time to allow any questions. That stops us having a half an hour break, but I'm happy to take members' thoughts prior to... Agreed? Okay, so we'll finish this agenda item with questions, then we'll take the remainder in block, time for questions, and then we'll close the meeting if that's okay with yourselves. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. Just trying to be fair. I'm not sure if this fits under the education remit here, but in Appendix 3, the public locations where period products are available, and if I refer to Ward 9, and there's a large swathe of East Kilbride not covered there in the Stewartfield area, and I accept the top of the page states that it's not maybe the list's been updated since it was published, but there's nothing in Stewartfield there, and can I suggest that we should be using Stewartfield Community Centre and Sports Hall, or in season and in season the Heritage Loch at Stewartfield as well. I find it strange that it's maybe just been missed out because most other leisure and culture facilities are there, but maybe if it's just take note of that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Aye, sorry, it's just to welcome this report and commend the work that the officers have done for this and rolling out this initiative to alleviate period poverty. But mostly, I'm going to follow on from what Councillor Watson said. In my own ward, in Ward 14, we only have 2 areas where for the public to pick up free period products. I'm just wondering, again, is there any other areas that they've looked at? Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the new community wing at the Newton Farm Primary School. Is this something that the officers are considering expanding areas that they can get period products? Thanks.
What we can certainly do is go back to our community plan and partnership colleagues, because they were the link for the sort of wider community aspect, and pick up on these 2 areas in particular. What I'll do is I'll have a glance down, I'll have a conversation with them about some of the other areas that might look small in comparison to the areas of access. Although I do believe the council still operate you can use a helpline, I think, or an email address to request products, and they get sent to your home address as well. But I'll certainly take that back to our colleagues in corporate about other locations that maybe could be used. It might be that we've moved on and progressed given the passing of time possibly, and our appendix might need updated, but I'll do that. I'll take a note to do that.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Councillor Filton, have you got anything more to add to that?
I don't know.
Thank you very much. Councillor Razak.
Thank you, Chair. I know we'll be running short of time, so I'll be very, very quick. Just commend the report and also the work that's being done by the department. I was going to ask page 107, wet wipes in toilets, and they said that it's not environmentally sustainable, but you can get environmentally sustainable wet wipes, and I'm just a bit puzzled because, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong about this, that say for instance, especially with the female toilets, that if there's any mess with the period side of it, that they would be needing to clean it up, and they would be self-conscious about, wanting to clean it up properly as well, and that would be, a prerequisite of it. Again, I could stand corrected if I'm wrong, and also even in the men's toilets as well, because boys have a bad habit of standing and peeing and then splashing everywhere, so it would be a good idea to put wipes there as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Razak. Lynn, are you happy to answer that one?
I've got personal experience in some of that there. Yeah, the question, not from a lot of schools, but the question did come up. We done a survey with the young people as well, so we went out to quite a number of schools. We've done quite a large survey along with our community plan and partnership colleagues as well. They've done a wider survey with the community. So it does come up, but our views were that we are trying to move forward in the sustainability, and it's not just about using, it's about deciding whether you need to use something in the first place and then whether you recycle it. So we kind of felt, we took the choice that we didn't think that was widely needed at this stage, but it's something we can monitor. If it comes up again that they do think there is a need, then we can look at it.
Thank you very much, Lynn. And finally, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome this report too. And in addition to the actions detailed in paragraph 4.2 of a named individual per school and access to period products for all that need them, in the spirit of the motion that was passed by Council previously, I would ask that a specific note is added to the guidance so that information and a clear policy can be communicated to all staff and pupils to ensure they are sure how to have a discussion about the stigma of menstruation and any way that this impacts their work and education, and supports can be put in place after that.
Yep, just to say we can look to do that. We can look to review the paperwork in there and the narrative that's written in there. That's okay. Yep.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Again, I'm cautious for time, and apologies, I had intended to go through every agenda and item detail given the important nature of them. However, I will continue the remainder in block. And if you've got any questions, of course, you're more than welcome to add your contribution. Can we agree to note report 10?
Agreed.
And that takes us on to agenda item 11. Accessibility Strategy 2022-25. The recommendations are on page 123. Do we have any questions? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd like to welcome the report. It's important that we do what we can to remove these barriers to education for everyone, wherever we can. And it's also good to see work going on in terms of adaptations for non-visible or hidden disabilities. There's still work to do, but it's good to see progress. And I have a question on that. What are we doing to remove the barriers to those accessing the support for those with these hidden disabilities? As I know from my own experience, it's often difficult for those pupils to reach out for that help or even know it's there. A lot of pupils might not know they have these disabilities until later in their school life. So what are we doing to address that? I'd also like to make a general comment to welcome the Gypsy Traveller Education Programme that's mentioned in the report, focus on improving access to education for those in the Gypsy Traveller community. When I was down visiting this site in Children's Crescent, I was there for one of the sessions going on with Mrs B, as she was called, in the My Kind of Town programme. And I know how engaging it is for the children. I know many of the residents do appreciate that work going on, but there is also a need to watch that we're not being complacent and we're building upon this work. I'm not saying we will be, but it's something to watch out for, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Anne, would you like to come in briefly?
Sure, and briefly, we do have a staged intervention approach in schools. So schools and staff do have good relationships, as you'll know, with children and young people. And in terms of pupil support, children have a named person. They have identified staff that they're encouraged to approach as well if there are any issues that they would want to discuss. But in terms of, additional support required from within the classroom, within the school, from out with the school, wider agencies, there is a structured approach to that. And we work hard to make sure that we don't miss anyone, and importantly, no stigma, and that we treat each learner with respect and work to meet their individual additional support needs.
Thank you. It's good to see that we're doing work to remove that stigma, because often there's a difficulty as well in that some people feel that they might need a diagnosis to access that support, and that's a long process in itself. For some things it can take a while and people need support in the interim, or they might not want to go and seek a diagnosis but they still require that support. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. And just given our time limits, could I ask the committee to agree to note the report? That takes us to agenda item number 12, Celebrating Success, which is in pages 149 to 152. Something that I did want to draw attention to, but we did get some of the content in the previous agenda items. Do we have any brief comments or questions? And can we agree to note the report? And final agenda item 13, Notification of contracts awarded between 1st of April to 30th September 2022, pages 153 to 158. Any comments or observations? Can we agree to note the report? And agenda item 14, no further urgent business has been intimated. Can I thank you to all members? Thank you to our Sorry, Councillor Logan, I thought you wanted to come in there. Thank you. Thank you to all the colleagues for taking part today. Thank you to Joan Lennon and Jennifer Gaffney, our 2 new teacher representatives in South Lanarkshire Council. Thank you to our further external representatives, and I hope everyone has a lovely Valentine's evening. Thank you.